So hi, I'm Jeff Bennett, and I'm here to talk to you about your security clearance. And the topic of this talk is, can your sexual behavior jeopardize your security clearance? Now that's a good question. It's not like the government is going to be morality police here. It's a big overarching type of issue. For example, when you agree to get a security clearance, you sign a non-disclosure agreement saying that you're going to protect classified information. Part of that protection is making you less vulnerable to coercion or foreign control and influence or blackmail or whatever your activity that in this situation, the sexual activity or sexual behavior could put you in jeopardy of putting the classified information under your control at risk. Now, remember, we talked about the 13 adjudicative criteria. There are 13 things that the adjudicators look at. And once you get your clearance, those 13 things are continued to be looked at as you go through your clearance process life cycle, because you will be investigated again, and other people are observing your behavior as well. And they have a requirement to report any behavior that kind of breaks the agreement that you have as far as protecting classified information and putting yourself at risk. So you're supposed to be, if you get a security clearance, or if you have one, or you're looking to get a security clearance, kind of above reproach as far as becoming a risk to national security. Of course, the adjudicators, when they look at your behavior, they also look at you as, the whole person concept. What type of person are you? And how does this one piece of behavior impact your ability to protect classified information? And some of those considerations, again, are how long ago did it happen? How many times did it happen? Is it continuing? So those are what the adjudicators take into account. Now, let's talk about specific examples of why sexual behavior could keep you from getting a security clearance or cause you to get your security clearance revoked. Remember, as a cleared person, you should be above reproach as far as putting classified information at risk. You've been deemed responsible, you've been deemed trustworthy and dependable. National security is at less risk in your hands in this situation. However, any sexual behavior or other types of behavior that causes you to be exploitable, unbalanced, or if there's a word, arrestable, something that can get you arrested, you're putting security or classified information at a higher risk. So we want to talk about how sexual behavior puts your security clearance at risk, because ultimately it puts classified information at risk. Some of the things that come to mind when I think of sexual behavior is the old spy movies and the old incidences where, I used to be in the Army, I had a security clearance, and it was in the 80s, and there were always reports of people, military people, civilians working overseas who were always being put into positions to jeopardize national security because they got caught having sex with somebody, a foreign person. Basically, for example, the Russians were hooking up men with beautiful women for sexual liaisons, which were then recorded and used to exploit or blackmail that person with a security clearance. That's what we often think of. So in the 50s and 60s and 70s, we remember reports of people with security clearance falling because they became exploitable, or they gave classified information over because they were caught doing something they weren't supposed to. But I'm also reminded of a story in the 70s and 80s where they tried to exploit a DoD employee who had a security clearance, but they filmed him having sex with somebody else. And they threatened to release that to his wife. And basically he says, go ahead, she knows that, we're swingers. So obviously that attempt failed. But that's the kind of position you can be in. And I always like to tell people when I'm giving training, If you're not a hot item over back at home in the States, if people aren't swarming all over you to be close to you, what makes you think it's going to be different when you're overseas? If you go overseas and suddenly you're a magnet for the opposite sex, there is an issue here. And it's probably not you, it's probably what you know or what you have access to. So please keep that in mind. All right, so let's talk about guideline D, sexual behavior, and how that can prevent you from getting a clearance or from keeping that security clearance. It's tempting to think that sexual behavior only refers to sex offenders, sexual harassers, or sexual predators, but it's so much more. This also covers fetishes, prostitution, trading sex for favors or sex for drugs, adultery, being a swinger, having multiple sex partners. Again, keep in mind, it's not the morality police that are after you. It is classified information that is in my hands. Is it safe? Am I still trustworthy? So let's go and look at some incidences. Before that, why does sexual behavior that involves a criminal offense, or whether or not it involves a criminal offense, why does it put classified information at risk? Well, it may indicate a personality or emotional disorder. Not always, but sometimes it may. It may reflect a lack of judgment or discretion. It may put a person under duress or undue influence or coercion. And it can raise questions about reliability, trustworthiness, or, the ability to protect classified information. So here are some examples. You can get caught. If you're lying about it, it's possible to get caught. I just read an article last year that security clearance investigators may be getting authority to review a subject's social media, their websites, their technical devices. So they may be able to determine, who has a pornographic addiction or an addiction to pornography, who is a swinger, who is unfaithful, who is, based on their sexual or other behaviors, who is susceptible, or who may become untrustworthy because of what they're posting on social media or what may be available on other websites. So technology, your behavior, putting that together can leave an impression of whether or not you are trustworthy. So let's talk about some considerations. How have people gotten caught in sexual behavior issues? Do you remember the case of Ashley Madison? Again, this wasn't a result of any sleuthing or detective work. Somebody actually broke into the database and released everybody's names. And a lot of people's clearances were at jeopardy. Their marriages were at jeopardy. Ashley Madison was a dating site for responsible adults or married adults. And it became all the rage because they promised a discreet behavior. And people got wrapped up in that. And they thought that what they were doing in darkness would never be brought to light. However, as we found out, it did get brought to light. And a lot of people had found themselves answering very tough questions. And a lot of people found themselves with their security clearance in jeopardy. Okay, so impact of sexual behavior. Why is it so important? Why do we look at it? Again, it could lead you into blackmail situation or coercion. Somebody could know something about you and use that against you and cause you pressure. And you might break under that pressure and release classified information to them, or become an agent of insider threat. And that's a big topic now too. So if you're exploitable, you could, as an authorized person, as a person with a clearance, could put security clearance in security or classified information in jeopardy. And this not only goes with sexual behavior, but the other behaviors that we'll talk about later: alcohol, drugs, cyber crimes, many, many other things. All right, so let's look at